Hello, my name is Carrie Lee. I'm a classical singer and a software engineer, and I wanted to share a bit about how I've been using ChatGPT for music preparation, particularly preparation with languages. And the subtitle of this is How to Use AI as an Aid for Translation, Interpretation, and Memorization. In this demo, I'll go over how to use ChatGPT to manipulate a translation in order to get multiple forms of it in the way that's useful for a singer. A lot of times when we start our music preparation process, we begin with a translation provided for us online or in a book or one that we've looked up. But often we don't have the translations in the multiple forms that can be most useful in order for us to be able to interpret the song and memorize the song. For this example, I'm going to be going through using Die alten bösen Lieder from Schumann's Dichterliebe, the 16th song from the cycle, which I did this process recently for preparation on that piece. Some examples of what we'll go into involve word-for-word translations in word order that helps you learn what each individual word means, short summaries in order to help you understand what each stanza means at a high level so you can stay zoomed out and think about the roadmap of the piece. What I've been calling more like vibes or performance cues around how to think about the different scenes within a song, and memorization guides. Memorization guides including mnemonics, individual word meanings, groupings of words, and how you might think about individual words and how they are conjugated in a language that you're not familiar with, at least at a spoken level. So the first step that I'll do here is go and get a translation. So for Die alten bösen Lieder here, I'm at the Oxford Song Festival translation. I like to start with a known good translation rather than simply asking ChatGPT to translate the song for me. In general, I really like to use large language models or ChatGPT to work with bodies of text or work with inputs that I have confidence in. You absolutely, if you don't have access to a translation, can dump in text in pretty much any language and get a useful translation back, with a caveat that it may miss pieces of meaning, and a human translation is probably a better starting point, but you can absolutely try it. One tip I do here is I'm not going to try and format anything useful here. I'm going to do a Control A, Control C to just copy the entire contents of this web page before I jump over to my ChatGPT window. In this demo, I am using the plus version of ChatGPT, or whatever it's called, the subscription, which I might pay the $20 a month for. I use 4.0 for most tasks, so we'll be using GPT 4.0 for this example. So I'm going to start with a prompt, and then I'm going to paste in this translation below. I'm going to do typing all these prompts live so that you can see what I'm doing. And all of this is live. Things may not go right. We'll see what happens. So let's see. I'm going to say... Typos are not a big problem with LLMs, which is nice. Okay, so what I said there is I'm going to paste the song from Dichterliebe below, Die alten bösen Lieder. Can you extract the German text and English translation for me? I like to start there just to get the clean version into the context. This might be useful for me as well. You'll notice it's also bringing in pieces of its knowledge from Athena's Waits, says from Dichterliebe by Heinrich Heine, set to music by Robert Schumann. And we get a version that has both pulled in. Now you'll look at this Richard Stokes translation, and we'll see, for example, what's a good example of this? Wie's Heidelberger Fass, then the vat at Heidelberg. It's a good example of a place where the word order here is not the same as the word order in German, so the translation is translated in a way that makes sense to an English reader. If you're a classical singer, you're probably used to doing tricks like understanding what some of the small words are, knowing that nouns are capitalized, and being able to map this out. But I'd like to just get the word-for-word translation without a word order support. This is not a translation I'm going to publish for an audience. It's just for my own preparation. So I'm going to write another message. instead of another translation, I'm going to say, can you give me variation of this English translation? Okay, so what I've typed there is, I'm a classical singer learning this piece. It can be helpful to give the model some context to understand what you're doing and why, so it can complete in the best way. I need to know what each individual word means. Can you give me a variation of this English translation such that the words are lined up with the German words, biased towards literal translations when needed? It's important that I know what each individual word means. And see, we're going to see two different options because they're going to be training on our output. So here we see the old evil songs, the dreams evil and bitter. In both cases, it's doing this bold in translation, which I like. I thought about asking it to do that, but skipped it and thought I'd come back to it. Inside lay I quite much, in it lay I quite many things. I like this one on the right better. It's a little bit more literal, helps me understand what each word means. I kind of appreciate that it does this beer for the dead, because beer is not a word that was familiar for me, so it would give you a better cue. So I'm going to go with this one on the right. I prefer this response. And with this is a really good starting point to be able to actually do more individual word study and see the maps across words. So I can see like, and planks, firm and thick. That same word that phrase that we had looked at earlier, the Wie's Heidelberger Fass, then the Heidelberg Vat. That makes more sense. It's not what I would publish necessarily in my program, but this helps me understand what each word means. So this literal word for word translation is super helpful as a starting point. Next, I also want a poetic translation, but not at the level, our initial translation up here was poetic. Let me find it, or I could go back to the leader. But another thing I like is having sort of an overview translation. What does each stanza mean, so that I can think about the map of the piece? That can be helpful too when I'm finishing a stanza and freak out and can't remember what's next. I'll get back to that a little bit too. But we'll say here, how about this? We're going to say, give me... All right, I like to reward it here. That's great. Can't type. I'm going to say a very brief like one sentence per stanza. So this will help me memorize what the text is about at a zoomed out level. It's not important. It's not about important to be poetic, being memorable is better. So here we have, the old bitter songs and dreams, will bury them now in a coffin. I'll put many things in it, though I won't say what yet. It has to be bigger than the Heidelberg Vat. Get a strong, thick beer and long boards, even longer than the bridge and mains. This is still kind of long. I'm going to say, can you give me something even shorter? Here we go. We'll bury the old bitter songs. I'll fill a massive coffin, make it long, sturdy, fetch 12 giants to carry it. They'll sink it into the sea. It holds my love and sorrow. That kind of gives me a map of each stanza, where the piece is going. Another kind of overview level that can be helpful here too is, if you get asked in a lesson or an audition, what is this song about? It's useful to have thought about that, and it's good to think about that in terms of your study of the piece, but it's also, I find it useful to have prepared for that in terms of reading or thinking about somebody else's description at a high level, what is the song about? So I'm just going to ask, at a high level, in a 1 to 2 sentence summary, what would you say this song is about? About burying the painful memories of lost love and sorrow. The singer envisions putting these emotions in an enormous coffin carried by the giants to be sunk into the depths of the sea, symbolizing a desire for release and closure from past heartbreak. I'm also going to ask it something that relies on its knowledge of the world, based into its in its weights, but knowing ChatGPT and the 4.0 model, I think it'll probably do a good job. Also, I know the song cycle pretty well, so I should be able to recognize if it's hallucinating or giving me a wrong answer. But I'm going to also ask it, can you contextualize this meaning within the greater song cycle? Greater song cycle. So this could be useful. Yeah, emotional weight he's carried through each preceding song. By consigning his pain to the depths of the sea, he seeks a profound and permanent escape. This is also a place where if I wanted to think more about this or trying to decipher it, I might paste in other people's writings about Die Stille or about die alten bösen Lieder and have a conversation with ChatGPT in a more interactive way than I might just read. But this gets me through, I think, through the short summaries. I'll jump on to the vibes example now. I'm going to keep this in the same chat, and then I'm going to switch over to a different chat for the fourth example, and I'll explain why when I get there too. So my vibes example is thinking about performance, giving me some cues or things that I could think about when I'm going to go and perform this piece, what each phrase means, important words, that sort of thing. So I'm going to say, can you give me a stanza by stanza performance guide highlighting important words? Highlighting important words I should remember. And let's see here. So I said, can you give me a stanza by stanza performance guide highlighting important words I might remember, giving me vibes of that stanza, and drawing any attention to changes from the stanza before. And here we've got text, important words, vibe, and vibe here is like a reflective and somber beginning, like the singer is gathering resolve. This stanza is about the weight of bad old songs that need to be laid to rest. The word Zarg is key, saying coffin sets the tone for the ritual of letting go. Emphasize the weariness in Alten and Bösen as if the memories are heavy and deeply unpleasant. And it goes into this. There's a lot you could play around with in this sort of an approach, depending on what you think would be helpful for you in terms of performance preparation. And then for the next example, I'm going to get into the memorization guides. And this is something I've been playing with a lot lately. I mentioned that I'm going to go into a different chat window. Just something to know about large language models is that they have a limited context window. And so when you continue one of these chats for a really long time, you can surpass the context window that it knows about. It'll keep the conversation going, but under the hood, what happens is it will often summarize pieces of it. So you might find it losing detail. So I don't really need all of these pieces that it had around the old bad songs, these different exercises that we went through already. I'd capture those, I'd put those in a document for myself. I can actually just go back to maybe to this, let's use the literal translation here as a starting point. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. Copy it, I'm going to go into a new text, and I'm going to say here, below is the literal translation of the Alten Bösen. Again, spelling doesn't make that much sense, it doesn't matter much. I'm going to say, can you give me, I'm going to say, I'm working on a table of German words grouped by different conjugations and genders with their English meaning. So to recap that, below is a translation of Die alten bösen Lieder. I'm working on memorizing this piece and need to learn what each word means. Can you give me a table of German words grouped by different conjugations and genders with their English meaning? This should be deduplicated. And then I pasted the text that I wanted to give me. And here we see a German word, English meaning, and type. And this isn't quite where I want yet. We see die, the, feminine plural, and then presumably somewhere down here we're going to have der with the masculine. And I'm just going to tell it that that's not quite what I want, but this was useful because now it can use this as part of its understanding again. It's often helpful to help the model slow down and do things one step at a time. So I'm going to say, can you group those such that words with the same meaning or role, i.e. die, der, are in the same row. I think I kind of overdid it that time. Alten, bösen, bös, arg, großen, dick, fest. Yeah, this is way too much. I'm going to say, you've overdone it. I should say, let's see, die and der. And let's find another one that's conjugated. For example, we have this one, we even lost it. There's a starke and stärke. Wait, sorry, starke and stärke. So I said, you've overdone it. Die and der should be together. Stärke and starke should be present and in the same row. It looks like some words are missing and you've overgrouped others. I don't mind yelling at it a little bit. It sometimes makes it work better. Now still we see großen, large, adjective. But I'm going to go back to this original because it's again missing some different forms. And I want to remind it, and again this has to go with building some intuition around how large language models work. It may not be closely looking at that first message, and now it's kind of trying to revise from one to the next. So I just want to say, that's better, but you're still missing some forms. Can you revisit based on my original input, which I'll share again below? And I'm going to say, you're getting the hang I want. It's just incomplete. Okay, this is looking a lot better. We have großen, großes, Größe. It's broken them out by their role. I'm okay with that. I might combine those if I were to make flashcards of these, but it's a little bit helpful to understand that. I actually was going to prompt it to help explain the difference between like Größe and großen, but I kind of got that from this result as a comparative with larger versus large big. So I'm good with this output. I will ask for more though, and here I'm going to say, can you order this table? I'm going to first reword it a little bit. can you order this table in a way that will help with my memorization? Based on your knowledge of cognitive science. Great, so we've got it. Articles and pronouns, key verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs and particles, conjugations and prepositions. And I think it's saying that trying to do them by frequency. I'm not confident that it would do that well, although Holt and Holtmere do show up a lot in the piece. And in nouns, I'd expect Zarg to be pretty high up there, so that's right. Then I'm also going to ask it, this is something I've been playing with recently. For mnemonics to help me memorize the word meanings. Interesting how it's mnemonic for the German D words define everything and then have einen and eine. It's not going to be perfect. Ich sounds like I. Well, that's a stretch, I think. Mich sounds like me. Sure. Mir is for me. Mich or mirer. Okay. Mine sounds like mine. Let's go down to the verbs and see it, or the nouns. Sarg sounds like sarcophagus. Okay. Bretter sounds like boards. I think that's a stretch. Lieder, similar to lyrics. Okay. Träume, imagine dreams of the Truman Show or try to sleep. I'll take it. Some of these are weird though. Let's try it again. The reason I'm doing this is not necessarily because these are bad. It's a good starting point. But to show that you can ask it to try again, and it'll give different input. The whole way you work with this, I would say, is not to expect that you're going to ask it one question and get one right answer, but instead that you follow an iterative process, getting to what you would like, and something that's really rich and helpful for your preparation, but not necessarily just a single pass. Leg, legen, lay it down, similar to lay or leg. Okay. Senkt, senken, senkt. Helps when they're cognates. Vortragen, for taking away. Imagine carrying something away. I kind of like these. We still got some of the same ones here. Träume, think of the trauma of bad dreams. Okay. Fass, a large vat. And then I'd also like to come up with, actually, no, I think for my next one, it might be easier to go back to the other chat. So I still have this one. For this next example, I have a problem when I get to the end of a stanza, I don't know what's next. I freak out, I'm messing up my memorization, and I'm not sure what's about to come. So I would like to be able to ask it to help me with mnemonics that are based in both the language and its meaning and the language and its sound to help give me cues to come up with the word in the next stanza. This is mostly a stanza-based thing, but I might do it on a line-by-line thing as well. So let's try first stanza. I'm going to say some of what I just said. I probably should just recorded that on there, but I'm going to type and be quiet for a second. Okay, so I said I often have a problem where I get to the end of a stanza and freak out and lose my memory of what's coming next. based on both the meaning of the language and the sound of the words, both what I've just sung and what's coming, can you help me devise a set of mnemonics that will help me remember what's coming? Again, I like to give it context about where I'm coming from so that it can better autocomplete. So stanza 1 to stanza 2. Holt einen großen Sarg. You've just called for the large coffin, so think about what it goes into next. Sound cue, hinein, echoes the idea of into the coffin. Imagine placing each sorrow carefully into this Sarg, starting with hinein. The in sounds, as in hinein, let you know you're diving deeper inside of it. Great, so these are all. End of stanza 2 is Wie's Heidelberger Fass. After comparing the cost of the vat, think about reinforcing it, adding a beer, the support for the talk. Throws me off. I don't know that English word beer very well, so the support for the coffin. Might look for an alternative one for this one, or just really nail that beer into my head. These actually look kind of useful. I'm going to see what happens if I had it double down on that. Let's just see what happens with that prompt. So look at these while it's typing out the rest. The old bad songs begin with heaviness. Remember, these are bad songs like Unwanted Memories. Die alten Bösen with a soft B reminds you to follow the dreams. And the next line, that's not helpful. After naming the bad songs, think of dreams to deepen the sadness. Okay, so we're thinking bad songs, bad dreams, and getting into the burial after naming dreams. Yeah, this is fine. I probably won't use this, but the previous one I think I could look at and take advantage of. So there's a lot of other things I think you could try here. I realize I've now talked for 27 minutes. This is a pretty long demo, but just to go back to recap where we've been, we started with a translation. Actually, maybe this is overdoing it, but let's just try if we only had the German and just kind of see what we got. Yeah, it's not bad. Anyway, so we started with a translation. We've manipulated that translation in conversation with ChatGPT in order to come up with word-for-word translations that mapped up to words so we can understand as a singer what each individual word means. We have short summaries to help get a zoomed-out view of the song. We have our vibesy look and performance cues around what each phrase or stanza is dealing with, as well as some like high-level what's going on in this piece, in the context of the greater work. And then memorization guides, coming up with tables that we could turn into flashcards that group things appropriately, that do so in a way that gives us also mnemonics and ways that we can think about it. So I know this was long, but I hope it was helpful. If you want to ever hear more from me, I am available at carryleetenor.com. Great, thank you.